7.2.0 has brought the xenomorph and Ripley into the fog. Let's talk about it. Out the gate, I love this chapter. Xeno is smooth, her gameplay seems to have a high skill ceiling with the tail attack and sufficient counterplay to her abilities. It has two main features, runner mode and teleporting, which is the coolest teleporting ability in a game by far. You crawl through the ground like a little vermin and can hear survivors above you walking around. Especially if they're injured, you can hear their moans. And you quickly change which vent you want to go to if you hear one nearby. You can also access any vent when you're down there, but highlighting them in yellow shows you the fastest path to that specific vent. The running mode is automatically entered and lowers your FOV just a little bit, towards the short Queen Sadako's height. This lets you use your tail. It's similar to Deathslinger's gun with a hitbox, super skinny and will be hard to pick up and learn to hit. Has a range about 6 to 8 meters and can hit over some objects, giving a fun little anti-loop ability. I also have seen people flicking it downwards to go over and then down into people, so it's like Nemesis if you could do it vertically, which adds a high skill ceiling. I'd be very, very surprised if anyone learns to get good at this killer very quickly. I think it'll be like Blight in terms of how long it takes people to truly learn them. You will need, like the amount of objects alone that you have to learn to hit over will be at least in the hundreds because of map specifics. And the PTB, you're not going to have nearly enough time to learn that. And behavior might change this before release, and I really hope they don't because it adds so much to her. Your tear radius also shortens to around 24 meters instead of 32 while in runner mode. This could be paired with Wander and Abuse if you really want to sneak up on people, but I personally don't like that perk because the FOV changes, so it might be best to wait until that's removed from it. The only way you will ever leave runner mode is by flame turret that survivors can set. They shut down after burning you and you can destroy them as well. And usually if you're aware of where they are and they start shooting at you, you can usually hit them with your tail before you're out of runner mode and then it resets the progress. So they're not very viable, and I think they're gonna get changed before live servers, so don't take all like the flame turret counter play in the PTB as the current version, because that's 100% getting changed, as much as I hope it doesn't. But for survivors, the main gameplay is going to be setting these near gens or in good looping locations before the Xeno chases you. Because then when you're getting chased by the Xenomorph into those areas, the turret will be able to slow down the killer even just a tiny bit, which might let you hit a vault, which is also why I think the turrets are going to be changed. When all the killer seems fun with the chasing, and behavior did a really good job making her, I think undead-teleports such as Trail of Torment and Dark Devotion will shine a lot. I already mentioned Wander and Abuse earlier, but this is because the Xenomorph when walking is basically near silent until they're like 5 meters away from you. And aura perks for quickly traversing the map to find survivors with the vents will probably be really synergetic with them. Speaking of maps, by the way, the new one seems alright, good size, the loops aren't that bad. There was one god palette if I recall seeing, but only for non-range killers, so not bad. There's quite a few Easter eggs around the map as well that players have found, so enjoy hunting those in public lobbies if you have time. Also, it's not indoors. For those that don't know, I main Huntress, and I was not excited for the map at all, but I've been pleasantly surprised that it's actually an outdoor, mostly area for a map. The killer perks are interesting, and there's something for just about everybody. There's Ultimate Weapon, which activates for 30 seconds after opening the locker. Survivors entering your tear radius during this time scream, revealing their position and getting blindness for 30 seconds. This perk has a cooldown of 30 seconds. So it goes for 30 seconds, and then has a cooldown of 30 seconds, so it's about a minute long of a perk. Off the bat, this perk will be really good on Huntress. It's basically Darkness Revealed mixed with Nowhere to Hide without the actual aura part, but reload, find someone hiding nearby, start a chase, or you can get a free hit depending on if they're in a dead zone. With OCAF, you'll be able to get free downs all the time. It's going to be good on practically everybody though. The only downside is requiring you to open a locker, which could lead to time constraints, but if you're running Iron Maiden on Huntress, Trickster for reloads, Artist and Bubba for counterplay, etc., it wouldn't be a waste of a perk slot to equip this. And it also counters windows of opportunity, letting you see which survivors play like total bots when they lose that perk. Next is Rapid Brutality. You no longer gain Bloodlust, but hitting a survivor with a basic attack gives you 5% haste for 10 seconds. Hit and run killers, infectious fright with exposed, and save the best for last will result in the perk getting nerfed. It will be overly good with just one of those three things, can't even imagine all three. However, if you get a map with a good tile like Haddonfield main building, you might as well just DC, because you can't hit them without Bloodlust in a manner that makes sense for you to even bother playing out the round, because while you will get blood points, you will lose. As much as I don't like Bloodlust tier 1 is still required for a bunch of tiles in the game, mostly main building orientated stuff and some RNG related things like Larry's with windows. So the downside of not having Bloodlust is going to make this perk very unique, because if you stack it with Stabiffle and play Deathslinger, who doesn't really use Bloodlust because he has the gun, it's going to be really, really good. But you can't use it on a standard M1 killer that doesn't do that. So you can't use it on Pig, because Pig requires Bloodlust on most loops at this point. Not most main building ones, but to like properly get hits. So it'll mostly see use on M2 killers that probably don't need it in the first place. Last for killer perks is Alien Instinct, showing the farthest injured survivor for 5 seconds and making them oblivious for 20 seconds whenever you hook a survivor. High mobility killers and Huntress will use this best, but the main value will be if the other injured person is hiding nearby, because the farthest just makes this worse barbecue in those cases. Because if all 3 survivors are on the other side of the map and only 2 of them are injured, you might as well just use barbecue, because then you'll see all 3 instead of just one of them, and it might not even be an injured person on death hook. But it could be really fun on Huntress to just say fuck you in particular, because while you won't have barbecue if you don't run it with that, you could use it, and then you see the one person, you just dome them in the head. But you could run it with barbecue and then see someone nearby and then also go for the barbecue people, which could result in unique gameplay. I think on kind of like Ghostface, where you see the person, and then you leave the hook, you stealth, and then you make your way towards them, because they probably don't know that, at least for like the first few hooks, that you know where they are, because they'll think, oh, I'm within barbecue range. So that should make some things, especially if they have distortion and you run Gearhead to eat through the stacks. Ripley is They couldn't get the actor's license, which is probably because of money. There are some people saying it's because she doesn't like violent video games, but she literally plays GTA 5, so that doesn't make sense. I think Behavior just didn't want to cash out, but the model looks close enough that you probably won't tell unless you have like filters and like actually really like the movies. But as always with licensed characters, especially recently, all of them have set cosmetics. So I myself will not be playing much Ripley, because there's not really a point when you can't mix and match the cosmetics, and survivors are cosmetics anyway. So I'll probably, like, I'll still buy her for the perks because content, but I probably won't actually be playing her much outside of the achievements. Kind of like what I did with Nick Cage, Gabe, all that. I'll probably stick to Claudette, Nia, Michaela, characters like that. But her perks include Lucky Star, muting all sound of pain and pool of blood for 10 seconds when entering a locker, and highlighting the closest generator and other survivors in yellow for 10 seconds, with a cooldown of 30. It's neat. It's not good, it's neat. It will be probably used with Deception and Head-On, because you Deception a locker and then you Head-On into the other locker with Quick and Quiet. But the issue is that there's blood leading to the locker. So I think a better use of this perk, if they want to change it, would be muting all sounds of pain and pools of blood when entering a locker within X meters, like 5 meters of a locker it happens. You'll get probably not much with like the cooldown and stuff like value, but you'll probably be able to use it a bit more in Chase and actually have some dynamic things. This will also go well with a perk that I will mention later. But the next one is Chemical Trap, which is like Blast Mine, where after 50% of progress on any generator, you can apply a trap to a dropped pallet for 120 seconds. The killer breaks the pallet, it explodes, getting them hindered for 4 seconds. It is a 50% hindered effect for 4 seconds. By the time they're done, you are halfway across the map and they just ditch Chase. Like, it's a get out jail free card. The problem is that I think it takes some time to set out a pallet, so it can't be like drop and then you set it and then you just get like a freebie. You have to find a pallet and go through an animation and stuff to do it. So you have to find a pallet that the killer is going to want to break later in Chase against you that they didn't break in that Chase because the survivor left or something else. So running this with Windows or any means to see palettes will probably be really good. But the perk itself, I think, is going to be much like Deliverance, where it's a niche meta pick that will be very, very influential in matches when it counts, but otherwise you're not going to see much impact with it, which is going to make people not run it. The last perk, however, is Goated, and people are going to sleep on it and not run it because there's this huge thing in DBD where people like active perks, like DS. Oh, I gotta use my DS, I want value. They don't think about like the subtle things like Fixated or Self-Aware, now that's called, because Stranger Things went away. But Fixated lets you walk faster. This perk is called Light-Footed, and it makes your footsteps silent until you do a rushed action with a cooldown 20 seconds. Now, this sucks for Spirit players off the bat, because unless they vault something like fast vaulting or medium vaulting, you're just not going to be able to hear them at all while they're healthy. But if you combine this with Self-Aware, and you combine it to like go around walls, wait for the killer to mind game, then leave, the killer's going to lose all track of you. I'm telling you that right now. The killer's going to lose all track of you. They're not going to know, because smart survivors are going to stand and wait for a killer to mind game and then go to a different loop. And the killer's either going to realize it or they're not going to. And if you combine this with perks that hide your scratch marks, like Dance With Me and Lithe, with Silent Footsteps, or even just blinding the killer. Just blind the killer, use Sprint Burst, you're halfway across the map. They don't know where you went, they can't hear you anymore. So it's just, this perk is gonna be, should be meta. If it's not, I'd be very surprised. I thought the same thing was made for this, where people wouldn't notice the value of it, but then there were people noticing it and being like, hey, this is super influential. So if content creators much larger than me make videos on Light-Footed, expect this to be meta for the next 6 months. Because it's not going to go away, it's really, really good, and it should honestly apply exhaustion, because it is such a good perk to use. Otherwise, that's practically it for the update. They didn't really do anything else. I think it's mostly to center on Xenomorph and how cool it is, because it's Xenomorph, that's awesome. I wanted an alien for years. But they changed some demos add-ons for some reason, from mid. Like, they're all mid. They got buffed. They nerfed one of his Eries for some reason, I don't know why. And some night changes, but I don't play night, and no one else does, because who likes night? So, like, I don't know if they're important or not. And PC players specifically are now able to change some more settings, such as FPS frame rate, VSync, whatever the other thing is. But it's just, it makes it to where you are able to make your game more customized. You used to have to go into a folder and access files to do that, but now you don't, which is super nice. And I think that's implying the FOV change slider might be coming mid-chapter? Copium, but I'm hoping. But yeah, that's it. The full chapter comes out on the 29th. Until then, we have the Barbecue Summer event. The next level of that tome launches tomorrow, as well as the next level of the Rift launches later this week. There's a lot happening this week. Next week is kind of dead. And then another week that's kind of dead. And then Alien, so yeah. But that's it. Laters.